Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Mr. Spu Vilakasi, Ms. Zantile Vilakasi Imwenda, Ms. Sarita Mathur, Dr. Bhuvan Prakash Singh, Mr. Sipiwe Mchunu, Mr. Kiran Singh, distinguished guests and online viewers. Namaskar and welcome to episode 8 of Pustakalok, Light of a Book. It's a discussion on the book Who Shall Stand by author Mr. Spu Vilakasi. To commence today's program, I would like to invite author of the book Who Shall Stand, Mr. Spu Vilakasi, for his remarks today on episode 8 of Pustakalok. Namaste and welcome, Spuji.
Anibonani, namaste, greetings everyone. I wish to convey my gratitude to members of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Indian Consulate, the panelists joining me today, and the online viewers for this amazing opportunity. I have great pleasure today to present to you my book titled Who Shall Stand, which is a collection of poetry and short essays. In telling the story of the book, I will talk about 3 aspects to my background. My formative years that shaped me into who I am and which influenced the writing of the book. These are empathy, eloquence, and endeavor. Empathy. I lost my father when I was very young, before I was in my teens. Experiencing loss at such an early age led me to develop a sensitivity to suffering, my own and that of others. In addition, growing up the only son amongst 6 children and my mother, women have been a symbol of strength, love, and all that is virtuous about life to me. So I have great empathy for the struggles of the poor, the marginalized, and the disenfranchised, as well as for women and children's rights. These strong feelings are a major theme in most of the works in the book, as illustrated by this poem, which celebrates single mothers. All hail the single mothers. A life is not a toy. Us guys love to play with our toys. It stays with us from when we are boys. We play all night and all day long. It is how we grow healthy and strong. When a toy gets lost or is fun no more, we forget about it or get some more. And so it goes in the life of a guy, pleasure seeking our entitled high. In the meantime, back at the ranch, in the clinic queue or the social welfare branch, she stands alone from dawn to dusk, fending for their child is her lone task. Where have all the fathers gone? Why is she standing there all alone? Another woman, another toy, another girl child, another boy. Single mothers are the order of the day. A mountain of needs with no one to pay. Children grow without a father figure. No support, no help. Go figure. Her life on pause, her dream deferred, her body haggard from wails unheard. She will raise this child for all she is worth, a forlorn cry from the wretched of the earth. All hail the heroes of our times, yet with no whistles, bells, or chimes. Single mothers standing strong for the age, the tower of this nation as the winds of change rage. Again, I said empathy, eloquence, and endeavor. Now for eloquence. I've always been drawn to words that are eloquently expressed, whether in speech, song, or writing. I grew up a voracious reader. Until recently, I believed that I was an accidental author, that my writing happened by chance. But looking back, I realized that I was always going to write a book, I just didn't know it until now. In my writing, I try to express the thoughts and feelings that swirl in my head and in my heart in as eloquent a manner as I can, so that they can make sense to those who read them. Here's a poem about the importance of names titled, What's in a Name? Come here, T-boy. Fetch that, Leroy. In the boss's garden, old Mandla is called Boy, and in the factory, his Mfana the toy. In Madam's kitchen, Nomusa is Mavis, on a ride to nowhere, on life's celestial Avis. What's in a name? A prophetic calling for my life's journey, directing my steps till I ride my last gurney. It's my sacred anchor, 100%, my treasure, my wealth, though I may not have a cent. You see, Khanyisile gives light to see in the dark. Sandile speaks of plenty as on Noah's ark. Sifiso has made the family's wish come true. Nolwazi is mother of knowledge and truth. Vusumuzi puts together what's torn. Zanele is Ntombi, is the last born. So don't change my name to what you prefer, to make it convenient for you to refer, for you take my whole life and you empty my well and leave me as nothing but an empty shell. Empathy, eloquence, endeavor. Finally, endeavor. I've always believed in doing something about the things I feel strongly about. My mother tells the story that from when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I would always run out the gates to help whenever I saw someone walk past our house carrying what looked like a heavy load, groceries or something to that effect. This passion for acts of service has stayed with me to my adulthood and is reflected in my choice of career in the social justice sector. In a similar manner, the book represents action on my part, my endeavor to do something about the societal issues that I feel strongly about. I also trust that it will move others to endeavor to change those situations they are unhappy about or to celebrate those that they treasure. I will leave you with the title poem from the book, which is an exhortation to all of us to do our best to make our world better. Who shall stand? Who shall stand for the innocent? Who shall stand for the indigent? Who shall stand for the sleep deprived? Who shall stand for the here and now? Lafa elihle. Our country burns before our very eyes. Our leaders don't care. Hearts are cold as ice. The cries of the people go unheard. There's no one to listen. The people suffer and die. No one cares. Compassion is missing. Violence and protests are the order of the day, the only way for many to get their way. Bigots in suits with business stealth, plot and scheme to keep the wealth, or take even more by day or night. Only they can have it. It's their divine right. They earned it, you see, by superior race. The others are sluggish. They can't keep the pace. Gangsters robed in political garb, loot and plunder all they can grab. This for my mother, that for my wife, this for the comrade who saved my life, this for my daughter, that for my son, this so they party till the rising sun. You can't control them, they won't desist. You get in their way, you'll be deceased. So tell me, who shall stand for the innocent? Who shall stand for the indigent? Who shall stand for the sleep deprived? Who shall stand for the here and now? A compassionate leadership made up of you and I. There are many other themes that are explored in the book. but empathy, and then friends, I hope that you get the book and that it moves you to find your empathy, express your eloquence, and undertake your endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Spu Vilakasi, for those remarks on your book, Who Shall Stand. Indeed, so simply written, but yet so heart-touching indeed. Our next guest speaker is Ms. Zandile Vilakasi Wenda. Ms. Vilakasi is also a writer and author. We welcome today Ms. Zandile Vilakasi Wenda for her remarks.
Thank you. I must first just express my appreciation for the invitation to be here. I'm honored and a great privilege it is. And especially as it is to sing honor or to give honor to my brother for the great work he's done here, which so much reveals him as a person. This is one thing that I see about the book. The first thing you note about it is that it truly, when I read it, I just thought, wow, this was like an opportunity for him to express all these things he's been holding on the inside. It's like he just found opportunity to really present who he is to the world. So what you see with the book, the first thing you see is that basically the reader identifies with actually comes to meet the author of the book, and even more than just the issues that are being discussed. The matters discussed are simply just a reflection of who he is. They are him, as he says in one of the poems. And so I see it more from that perspective. And I've identified primarily three things that I believe it reveals about him that is revealed in this book. The first one, I believe it reveals very much the storyteller in him, who got lost somewhere along the line in adulthood as he was growing. I believe hasn't presented him much opportunities to express this gift that has always been inside of him, being a storyteller. And I see in the poems that, wow, because now you must know is we never knew he was. He himself, I'm sure, is shocked to discover he's a poet. Everyone is like, where did this come from? Because we never knew he even had it in him. And then later I realized, no, this is actually the storytelling part of him, because when we grew up in childhood, he was the greatest storyteller. He tells in the book about the story of my mother's kitchen, the sounds in my mother's kitchen. And you know, that one is, it brings to mind such a vivid remembrance of things, of how what used to happen there. He was the main person talking in those stories. I mean, he would get us laughing. We knew everything about what's happening at school, his friends, the teachers. We had jokes in the house that just came from all of his stories. A very, very big storyteller, which disappeared with adulthood. I think just the jobs and life itself, he hasn't done that much. So I think that the writing is helping to bring back that element of him, the poems that he brings out. But the second element that I believe comes through, second aspect of him that comes through very strongly also, is his deep love and care for people. As he says, he's a very self-sacrificing individual, always helpful. He goes out of his way to help people, loved always, wherever he is. The old ladies will all love him and come to him for everything because he's always ready to help them. And I see this comes through very strongly in the book, his hate for the injustices of life, the anger at the corruption that is happening, the empathy for women and how women are being treated is very much an expression of this desire, this heart that he has to see people being treated well. I see there an expression of a desire that people would change. You know, I think he wishes that everyone in the world, he can touch the hearts of people to change and see each other and value each other more and do less of the abusive things to each other. And so that is the other element I see there. And then the third thing that I see come through in this book is his natural inclination to bring inspiration to other people, to protect other people. And as a teacher also, he's a teacher and a coach, very strong in that. And I see that in the prose aspect of the book mainly. The pieces such as overcoming the unconscious bias, lessons from the pair of shoes, and there's have on tomorrow. What? There's another one about tomorrow, eh? Hang on to tomorrow. Yes, I think that's what the story says. Hang on to tomorrow. They are not only in motivational, but also help the reader to do some self introspection. They help self reflection by a person to look at what is it that I'm not doing, what can I do better, and they kind of are a guide that one wants to grab the book in the morning first thing and let it be the first thing you read is one of those stories, because it's going to inspire you for the day. It's going to tell you how to handle things better. I felt extremely moved by those myself. I mean, he points out issues there that we come across in life that I found in myself. And I myself was inspired with, oh my gosh, I need to pay more attention to this. Now I'm going to pay more attention to this. I'm going to do this. So I believe that as well, the teacher in you comes through so strongly. The motivator comes through very strongly. The empathetic and sensitive person who wants to see other people uplifted also comes through very strongly. And I believe the readers will receive that from it. So overall, the book, I would say, is very much an emotionally moving, very moving. Perhaps personally, probably because I also know some of these things. He's gone through the painful aspects, the divorce aspects, the pain that comes through from that. So it's kind of authentic. That's why I say it gets the person to really meet the author, because you feel him, you hear the authenticity from it. But it not only ends with that, the best part of it is the inspirational aspects that he shows in it, that in spite of the pains of life, the negative aspects of life are simply just part of what life is all about. There is still life after all of those things. You can get up, you can lift yourself up, you can move and push life, you can have joy again, the sun can shine again, and you are a victor in life. And I believe that it brings out in a strong way, and I felt very inspired by it. So thank you so much. I believe that's what this book will do to the readers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandile ji, for giving us that insight on the book Who Shall Stand. Indeed, taking us back to short stories and memories of all our mom's kitchens. Who Shall Stand shall definitely take us on a trip down memory lane. Our next guest speaker on the book Who Shall Stand is author Miss Sarita Mathur. Today we welcome on episode 8 of Pustakalok, Miss Sarita Mathur.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me here. And many thanks to Dr. Prakash Yogi from the Swami Vivekanand Center, and to all the people there who have made this live recording possible, to my fellow panelists, to Spongizini Vilakazi, the author for today. I'm really happy to be here to talk about Who Shall Stand. Who Shall Stand is an outstanding book. Sbo has done himself proud and South Africa proud by writing this book, because this book is a reflection of life, of who we are and who we can aspire to be. I think everybody who talks about Who Shall Stand has to talk about the title poem, because who shall stand for you and me? Who shall stand? And the answer to this question is that if nobody stands up for you, stand up for yourself and do what is right in this world. Stand up and do what you believe in. Be authentic, do good. Don't say, so and so is making money. These people do not care about me. I am Black, so I do not matter. But there are some lines, as he said, to remember. The shadow I cast is formidable. The force of my spirit is tangible. My soul is the birthplace of humankind, born dark so I can stand in the light. So these are powerful lines, very powerful lines, and they apply to everybody because we have the ability to move humanity by being the change we want to see. So said Mahatma Gandhi. And Spo used these same words like be the change who you want to see, but he used it in terms of the A, B, C, and E. So A is for acknowledgement. A is acknowledging who you are, the changes you can make in the world around you. B is bearing the change. And this is so important because it talks about forgiveness. So many times in our life, and it's not only in South Africa, it's like when you are a child, you're growing up, you're married, or you're not married, but all of us have grievances against other people. We have grievances about what life has done to us. And his B says that bears the pain of letting go. So leave that, choose to reflect on your present, let go of your past, and choose the wise, positive path. So that's a very important lesson. And third, and so it's A, B, C, and the E part of it is empathy. Bo has already spoken about empathy. His sister has said about, spoken about how empathetic he was when he was a young boy growing up, and he would help people whenever he saw they needed help. So these are the three things which really stood out for me, A, B, C, E. And he has already spoken about his poem, Who Shall Stand? It's powerful. Each one of us has to stand up for what we believe in. Don't ever be a victim. Why do we have Spongiseni Vilakazi here today? And what are the influences which have actually shaped him? From his mother's kitchen, growing up with 5 sisters and some cousins, stepsisters. He also realized the value of his mother's kitchen. He learned to value women in his life. And that value of women led onwards to him being, I should say, like a transformational leader. So you talk, you reflect, you preach, and you transform. Transformation is very, very important because you do what you have to do, and then you go out there and get people to reflect and change the way they see themselves. Also, Spo is a realist. He sees things as they are. So as much as one can say apartheid did this to me, apartheid did that to me, and we have to deal with the past of South Africa, but also realize that it is now a rainbow nation and each one is there to make a difference. So Spo is a realist in the sense that he also talks about xenophobia. And he says that, as much as we talk about Ubuntu, it is not only for us as South Africans to think of each one of us, we also have to think about our fellow brethren from the continent. Why are we destroying their lives, looting their shops? Why are we not embracing them as fellow human beings? So we have to be there for humankind. We can't just be there for South Africans only, because that is humanity in general. You can't really just say that I'm very empathetic, but I'm empathetic to so-and-so people and not to other people who don't belong to your country. So that's a true reflection of a person, because you are also being realistic and not pinpointing fingers only at one person or one race group, but also at the whole of humanity. We are telling, Spo is telling them that rise up above your differences, be a total and complete human being. Now, Spohr was not always a poet. He was not always writing prose, as his sister said. He found that in himself, and we have insomnia to thank for it. In the early 2019, when the year just started, he couldn't sleep. Tossing and turning in his bed at night, he got up one day and said, okay, let me grab a pen and paper and let me start writing poetry. And that's what he started doing. He started writing, and then, as you know, when you journal, when you get up in the morning or in the middle of the night, that's the most creative hour of the day. Spohr wrote copious amounts of literature, and all his thoughts and reflections came out. And he thought also about, besides the laughter from his mother's kitchen, he thought about his children, Disney XD. I love that poem. It's like just sharing time with your children, watching cartoons. And it's so important, really, to spend time with those you love, to give them your presence, because your presence is the present which they want. It's a gift of you to them, because children really quite often just need the presence of people to love them, care for them, and to play with them. And Spohr does that with his children. He acknowledges his divorce, but also is grateful for the lessons he learned in his life. And that's beautiful, because it's delving into your past and finding gratitude. How did your wife shape you, made you thrifty, helped you to see the beauty of life, and gave you beautiful children who you treasure? So, you know, as authors, and especially people who write a memoir, when one is delving deep inside your own self, you grow as an author, you grow as a person, I should say. And Spohr is doing that by writing about his book and also sharing it with everybody. He talks about the rainbow. Rainbow, I love the rainbow. I love rain as well. Like sometimes it's pouring with rain and people said, oh, it's raining, but I say, I love the rain. And after thunderous amounts of rain or pitter-patter raindrops, you always see sunlight, and the skies come out. And Spohr has written about the rainbow. And the rainbow is of many colors. And he speaks from his own perspective about life in South Africa. And why did God make a rainbow if not to celebrate the diversity of people, the diversity of the human soul, people of different colors, the rainbow the nation of South Africa, which has people of all different colors. In India, you never talk of a colored person, because people in India are also very dark and they're also very fair. And I'm like the color of wheat. So my complexion is wheatish, but nobody really talks about a colored person. So that was new to me when I came to South Africa. But as he says, why did God make the rainbow if not to celebrate colors? And the colors of the rainbow nation, the colors of South Africa, and the diversity of the beautiful people who live there, and the Ubuntu which is amongst each one of us, each one for everyone. So also, like Spohr talks about the flashy lifestyle of people, like people who are humble, have lived their life humbly, they are hardworking, they don't drive fancy cars. Why are they now why are they now getting these expensive funerals in limousines? So if they die, why not help them when they are needy and growing up in a humble manner? Help them at that time, spend money on them, acknowledge them, be grateful, live your life in gratitude. And the same as you see as an author, but also as a person. And I'm just saying all these things, it's comparisons, because all of us are the same, really. And in India, we spend money on expensive weddings, and sometimes people take loans because of these weddings which we have. So it's the same thing. Basically, he talks living a life honestly, spending money on the things which are really needed, going out there and helping people and being there for everybody, and also to in standing tall and being the person you want to be and making a difference in the world. So thank you very much for having me on the program, and thank you to our online listeners as well. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Sarita ji, for those insights. Indeed, Spuji has touched on various elements in his book, Who Shall Stand, when he refers to the rainbow and our beautiful lands of South Africa and its people. Our next guest speaker is an epitome of knowledge, and that is Dr. Bhuvan Prakash Singh, an author and educator in South Africa. Namaste and welcome, Dr. BP Singh, for your remarks today on episode 8 of Pustakalok.
Namaskar, Shristi. Hello, Sunny Bonani, to my fellow panelists, to Dr. Yogi, and the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Indian Consulate, as well as to our online listeners and guests. I think at the outset, congratulations, Sibongi Seni, on an excellent piece of literary work. I think it's not only this panel discussion that will illustrate the value of your work, but rather your social activism as a true and proud South African comes through in this work. And I think it touches anyone that will actually read your work. Much has been said about your book, so I'm just going to concentrate on a few things. I think, and coming from a teaching background, I generally tend to start off by saying that any good piece of literature can be considered good if it affects the reader. And I think the issues you raise in your poetry and your prose, as well as the fact that you turn the spotlight on yourself as an individual, you put yourself out there for analysis, that itself tells you that we can self-reflect. And there's a study, a PhD study called autoethnography, which talks about turning a lens onto yourself. And I just want to digress a little bit by saying that at various levels of literature, we study great people like Shakespeare and Sarita Mathur. The issue with autoethnography is, if we can be unbiased in our analysis of other people, do we have the potential of being unbiased when we look at ourselves? And I think it's good that your work has shown that one can indeed apply this lens, this unbiased lens, to oneself, and in this way offer a solution to the world in terms of the problems that we face as South Africans in particular, and I think the world in general. I like the title of your book, Who Shall Stand? All our panelists have spoken about it, but I noticed that in the cover itself, even the word who stands separately from the other two words of shall stand. And I think it's a very nice touch, a very stylistic touch, to beg the question of that individual person or persons out there that could stand up for what we believe. And I think that who becomes rhetorical and actually becomes pointing to the self. And I think that's an excellent title that you've chosen. This rhetorical question places emphasis on us as people. It's not something that has an answer. There is no perfect answer to the question, but the question itself begs an answer. And that's where self-reflection comes in. I think, Zbo, that this piece of work, which you call your musings, written both prose and verse, yes, shares your thoughts with the world. But as I've said, and I would underline the point, it allows me as a reader as well to analyze myself. And that is a very poignant message and style and technique and effect of your book itself. I like your writing style, Zbo, in the sense that it's very versatile. In the sense that in some cases you use free verse with entire 8 stanzas, for example, with no punctuation. And other poems where punctuation is used very, very cleverly. And that I think is very good because it shows you as a writer are capable of writing good prose and good verse. And not all of us actually in that space. So that's really an accolade to yourself. Your writing to me is reflective in the sense that we look at oneself and society. Sometimes we are caught up in the day-to-day life of actually making a living. And we don't analyze life itself and the context in which we survive in this world. And your work allows us to do that. It is cathartic in the sense that sometimes we don't like what we see. You've often spoken of the issue of bias. And as a South African writer yourself, writing of the South African context, I think many of us have bias, but we don't like to admit that we are biased. But it's there and we know it. So I think the cathartic effect of your work allows us to self-reflect and say, let's be honest with ourselves. And there's very few pieces of work that actually do that, and that's good work. Introspection is there in a very personalized style of writing, I think wins over your reader, because you never claim to be perfect. None of us are perfect. And I think in the way you write indicates the fact that we should self-realize our imperfection. And that would be a stepping stone to actually trying to improve the quality of our lives and those around us. The free verse that you use was very strategic for me in the sense that if this book could be studied at school, and you look at a learner, and generally we have a reading problem in this country, if not the whole world, the very easy flow and the simplicity of your language contributes to the messaging of your work. And that is very important for a writer, that the message gets across. So I think the use of free verse is very, very effective in this particular sense. The content of your work, I like the spread. It wasn't just on the self. If you look at the issue of feminism, which has been spoken about in different ways by Zandile and Sarita, yes, you've learned from home, all hail the single mother. If you look at the South African context, if not the world context, we're increasingly having this issue where women sometimes have to fend for the family on their own. As a country that has come through from the apartheid era where we had migrant labor, for instance, the context was understood. But in the new South Africa, that context is fast changing. But still we have the advent of the single mother. And I think, speaking here as a man myself, and we have Dr. Yogi, Sipiwe, and yourself, that's this more, it causes us to self-reflect and say, times have changed. Have we as men changed? You spoke of the laughter in my mother's kitchen as a piece of prose. That itself said to me that as a young man in South Africa, and you're still a young man, you reflect on the maturing process. And the maturity to appreciate the woman in our lives as we go on from youth to old age begins at home. And that prose talks to the importance of family and the importance of imbibing the correct or acceptable standards of behavior towards women, such that we value them later on in life and in every facet of our life. And here I'm talking about not just family and friends, but any woman out there. I think Sarita mentioned just now, Zandila mentioned your intrinsic need to help other people and the way the older women in particular get attracted towards you in a positive sense, of course. It says that that's the kind of personality we need to have as men, where women are comfortable with us and where they can rely on us without having to think of negativity. The Devil Drives a Jeep, I think, is a very, very nice poem in the sense that if you look at what's happening to the youth, especially the females today, you have the sugar daddies out there. And I think in a country such as ours, where in some instances money is freely available, as are the flashy cars, which indicates, of course, the flashy lifestyle, the victimization of our young women, the fallacies and the gullibility are heightened in the poem. I think there's a strong message here for both the men who use financial success to beguile our young women and make them single mothers thereafter. And of course, the fallibility of our young women to fall for flashy things, whether you call it fashion, whether you call it style, and how we sometimes walk into traps, social traps, with open eyes. And I think the way you wrote the story of the Jeep is very nice, very easy, very flowing, but the messaging is very, very poignant. And I think this is why this would be actually a very good prose and piece of work for school. And I hope at some stage you look at offering to the Department of Education. If you look at the issue of valuing women, which should become a way of life, that prose of yours actually carries a subtle message of how we as men and society should change the way we look at women. I think, yes, with democracy, we've had some changes constitutionally, in theory, but I think your work begs the question, do we do that in reality? Hence the author-ethnography value of your work. I must say that you are a politician of sorts, a very effective sort. We've not said that openly, but I think with the opening comment of literature is good, a piece of work is good literature when it affects our lives. And I think with your inimitable style, the political message you're sending out to South Africa and to the world is really very, very effective. Yes, of course, if you look at Who Shall Stand, that's been discussed at length. The I, as a citizen of this country, to make the difference and not rely on someone else, is a very powerful message. It talks to active citizenry. We cannot elect people as leaders and put them in positions of power and pray to God that they do the right thing. We have to be more than that. We attribute such power to leaders. We've got to hold those leaders accountable. And that's what activism is about. And I really like the second one written about Rivonia Revisited. The Rivonia trial was one that was construed, depending on perspective, being right or wrong. We have another Rivonia today, you're right, because we are in a state of chaos right now. And I think the activism that we are not really allowed in the days of the Rivonia trial in the 70s and 60s, we have the freedom today to be activists. And I think those two poems actually tell us we have a political and a civic duty to be active in the life in which we lead, in this country and anywhere else. As Sarita says, the message is international and universal, not just South African. I just want to quickly look at the point of identity. In this lens that you've attributed to yourselves, Bo, and this has been already spoken about by Sanjita and Sarita, you put yourself out to the world, but it's just more than just you. It's the I. And that I is every reader out there, every listener out there, every member of the audience out there that is listening to this particular platform. What's in a name? You've spoken about yourself, the matter of identity. Again, without going too much into politics, we could call a person an alternate name because of convenience and because it's easy to articulate and may think nothing of it. But really, what is a name? A name is our identity. It is who we are. It is a single word that characterizes us even in our absence. And it's a matter of identity. And that identity is acknowledgement and appreciation of the self. And sometimes, often in the past, it was through bias, we chose to change a person's name. If you had a person working in the garden, you'd call that 50-year-old man boy and think nothing about it. You think it's a term of respect. It's not. So such self-reflection talks to our bias. It also talks about the appreciation of our fellow man. Xenophobia, you're one of the few people that title something saying xenophobia the good news. It's normally associated with all the negativity. But I think that poem itself that talks about seeing yourself in others. And where, of course, you talk of Ubuntu. I am we and we am I. The very fact that we are all one. And that is the future of this country, of active citizens and a great South Africa, is an excellent poem, especially looking at the crime in our country, but more important than that, the issue of xenophobia. And Sarita just very eloquently indicated her experience when she came to South Africa and the way she saw our South Africans look at each other. So yes, again, like everything else you've done, politically and otherwise, there's a message in your work in terms of how South Africa can actually be a better place. If you see me begs the issue of identity. You know, sometimes I'd like to liken this when you drive down the same street every day and you see a beggar in the corner of the road. After a while, you forget to see him. Subconsciously, you know the person there, but you look at the person, but you do not see the person. And again, it comes down to the issue of identity. When we are South Africans and as people generally around the world, we're so busy with our everyday lives. Do we stop and smell the roses? Do we live in the here and now? Or do we live every minute thinking about what I have to do next? Do we appreciate the here and now? And I think you very cleverly looked at the poem, If You See Me, to bring us to the issue of identity. Do you, when you see me, do you acknowledge me as a fellow person, as a fellow human being? And through acknowledging me and appreciating me, we become closer and we appreciate each other's people and make a better society. In the piece, Run Your Own Race, I think that was a very nice poem in which to stop your prose, in the sense that we judge ourselves according to other people. You see what you perceive to be a more successful person in life, and you strive to be like that person. Yet you do not really know that person. And it is through this very comparison that you either suffer inferiority or a superiority complex. And that brings in the element of bias again. So the element of bias you spoke about run across the spectrum in all your work. And I think the messaging to society is very, very clear. Yes, lessons from a pair of shoes, we cannot not speak on that. We take people for granted, and we've covered that already. But like any relationship in life, like a pair of shoes, if you do not take care and cherish that relationship, it is going to be lost. And there's certain relationships like family you spoke about, like the beloved Caroline, etc. Everything in life needs to be cherished, like our relationships. I just want to mention the beautiful funerals that has been covered by Sarita, where we speak of the lavish goodbyes we have, but when the person is alive, there's no lavishness, there's no luxury, there's no appreciation that is shown. It's a matter of self-reflection in terms of what our values in life are. And your entire book is about values. I'd like to conclude by quoting the last line of the piece, Overcoming Unconscious Bias. It is also the last sentence in this work of yours. And I quote, may we each have the courage to take the necessary pain to grow, unquote. All the best to you, Zbu, for a fantastic piece of work that you've written, for a great literary future, and to say, hail and viva to your social activism. Thank you.
And that was Dr. Bhuvan Prakash Singh for his deep insight on Mr. Spoo Vilakasi's book, Who Shall Stand? We've come to the conclusion of episode 8 of Pustakalok, Light of a Book. I would like to now introduce Mr. Sipiwe Mchunu from the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban to render this afternoon's vote of thanks.
Namaskar to all of you. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, I am so delighted today to deliver a vote of thanks on today's 8th episode of the program, Pustakalok, meaning Light of the Book. Today's discussion was about the wonderful book that was authored by Mr. Spoo Vilakasi. The title of the book is Who Shall Stand? When I listened to the book, there was a sense in me that Brother Sibongiseni, he is an activist. Because when I listen, there is a sense of activism in him with all the issues that he touched on the book. So if he was not an activist, then maybe in future he's going to be an activist. So thank you very much, Mr. Vilakasi, for this wonderful book. Now allow me to thank all those who participated, all our online guests. I'll start with the author himself, Mr. Sibongiseni Vilakasi. Thank you very much, sir, for authoring this wonderful book. Thank you very much, sir. Secondly, I'd like to thank Ms. Zandile Vilakasi Mwenda. She's an author also, for the great remarks that she gave about the books. And also I'd like to thank Ms. Sarita Mathur. She's an author also, for her wonderful remarks that she gave about the book. Lastly, I'd like to thank Dr. Bhuvan Prakash Singh, an educator and an author. He also gave a wonderful remarks about this wonderful book called Who Shall Stand? To all of you, all our online guests, we like to say, Danyavat, thank you very much for taking part on today's program. To Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Sristi Harinarayan,
Mr. Kiran Singh.
thank you very much for making sure this program runs smooth today. Thank you to all of you. To all those who were with us online, we'd like to say thank you very much for taking part on today's program. Please visit our Facebook page so that you will be updated about all cultural activities organized by Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Devon. To all of you, Sponseni ji, Zandile ji, Sarita ji, Sri Bhuvanji, thank you very much. You were such a wonderful people. To all of you, have a wonderful evening. Namaskar.